will be your Variadic Template Function. Now let's see the example to understand more better. So suppose if we call the display function, that is in this manner. We are calling display, we are passing 3 arguments. You can see first argument is an integer by the value 5. Second is a double, that is 3.6. And the third argument is a character, that is W. When we simply call the display function and we are passing 3 arguments. So how the compiler will deduce this type of the function? Here what we are having, the first argument is like capital T, then data, comma, args, then space triple dot space arg, like this. But we are calling the display function and we are passing the 3 argument. So how the compiler will use the definition of this function? So let us see further. So here the compiler, what it will do, it will use the C++ type deduction mechanism, yes, as well as it will be using the recursive method. So now let us see how this, where is this recursive mechanism taking place and how it is deducing. Let's see. So the compiler will internally do in this format. That is, you have to define in this format, but how the compiler will deduce actually will use the recursive method. Let us see. The compiler will deduce in this manner. Internally, it will create a display function. You are calling display function passing 3 arguments. That is in this manner. Integer data, because 5 is of integer data type. 3.6 is double, therefore double D. And then W is a character, therefore char C. So a compiler will internally do all these things. And what it will do, you can see cout, and this is just message data is, and we are printing data. What is this data? You can see it is a first argument in this display function. So what about this rest 2 argument of this display function, that is double D and char C? What about that? We are not using, we are only displaying this first argument. So here you can see in the next line, we are calling again the display function, but we are passing the rest argument. So we have displayed this data here, that is the first argument here, but we are calling again the display function and we are passing the rest 2 argument, that is double D comma char C. In this manner, the compiler will enter. So what you will have to write the definition Variadic template function in this manner, and compiler internally will simply reduce in this manner. You are calling in this manner, so it will reduce in this manner. Now again, it will be reducing. So now you can see what will happen since you are calling display function again. Now in that case, it will reduce like this. You can see here display function double D comma char C, because you can see here the display function will have 2 arguments. You can see in this manner. So internally compiler creates all these things, uses the recursive mechanism, as well as it will use the C++ type deduction mechanism. Again the display function, then double D comma char C. Now since this will display the first argument, what is the first argument? It is this double D, so it will reduce this D. So you can see here it will display the message here, that is data is, and it will display this message, and then again it will call the display function and it will forward rest of the argument. Rest of the argument is this variable C, so it will forward in this manner. Now it will again reduce. Now what? Display on only 1 argument. So we can see again display and 1 argument, that is char C. So we are having only display function having only 1 argument. So it will display this first argument in this format, and then again it will call the display function, but now with no argument, and then it will return back. This is how all this compiler will use this recursive method, and will simply also use C++ type deduction, and it will simply generate all these. Internally the compiler will generate these type of the functions and will simply calculate the result. That means it will simply display the output. Here is the strace, that is the stack trace actually of the Variadic template function. So we have seen the display Variadic template function. So how does the trace goes actually of the stack? So first what happens, this is void display in data comma double space D comma char C. In this display function will print this first data, first argument, and then it will pass in display actually this 2 arguments. So therefore display 2 arguments. Again it will display in this display It will display the first argument and it will simply pass the this second argument, that is it will call display and it will pass this char c. Therefore you will have display char c. Then again it will in this display char c, it will simply display the first argument char c and it will again call the display but with no argument. So therefore this display will be called and then finally it will be returning back. So this is how this trace is happening. This is how the compiler internally will deduce actually and finally will give the output. Now let us see the program on IDE and let us execute it.